it's basic to Israel. Compare that conviction to American presumptuousness, presumption to speak of God freely, casually, speculatively. I think God is like this. I feel that God is like that. That's the habit that we've all picked up from our culture. What's the relationship between this particular God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and the sort of generic, casual American God that people throw around, who isn't all that well known or all that consistent or all that, he's rather vague. Israel gains a kind of humble confidence in speaking of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Israel has a lot of material to work with in understanding God. The church thinks that Jesus is a breakthrough that casts all of that older knowledge like shadow to light. Not that it's wrong or superseded, but it's been so fulfilled in Jesus that, wow, it's like night and day, practically. And that begets maybe still a humble, but a greater confidence. That we can speak about God in clear and secure ways because Jesus has shown us something that we can depend on. Right? Nothing wrong with that. I hope you come away with a greater and better grounded confidence at Westmont in doctrine, in life, period. What happens, though, is the culture shifts to a place of taking that for granted. Taking the hard-won, really divinely won gains of human knowledge for granted. And people begin to think that it's just self-evidently obvious that God exists. And that this God exists. And that this God is who we've claimed. And what happens is the foundations get buried or eroded or just neglected. And it doesn't help that movements like transcendentalism and romanticism and the like start privileging human feelings and human experiences as essentially trustworthy. So a society of people with Christian heritage and vestigial notions of God start associating their feelings about God, which have been formed from those foundations, and draw on those sources, but not realizing that's where it's coming from. Where did we get the idea that God was love? Well, we got it from the New Testament. We got it from the Old Testament. Israel got it from God acting a certain way and demonstrating himself to be God. When people start forgetting the history and the process and where this stuff comes from and start trusting in their own convictions that have been formed that way, it just becomes God is love because gosh, well, why wouldn't God be love? And what happens is we drift from our foundations, keep some of the substance, and then maybe 100 years later, the foundations are that much. Really we've shifted our body of knowledge from a more secure historical foundation to a more existential foundation, which turns out not to be nearly as robust as we thought, and there's that much more drift in 50 years or 100 years. It leads to people with, some of their convictions are accurate, some of them are inaccurate. They can't tell the difference. They can't tell why one is one and one is the other. And with a lot of false confidence, which can be easily broken. Someone starts asking why. Why is God this? A lot of people don't have a good reason. That's just how they were brought up. That's what they felt. That's who somebody told them God was. It's not a good place to be. And it's not where Israel is. It's not where the church is. It's not the apostolic faith. Should Christians stop using the word God because it's used in so many widely differing ways? You can see how there's a case for that, right? If a term has just been ruined, maybe we should find a different term. Has the term God been ruined? Well, 2 stories in our last couple of minutes. The first one comes from Genesis 14, where Abraham has to fight a battle. He's an old man, and he ends up having to fight a battle with a couple of people to rescue Lot. I think of this scene in Genesis 14 as kind of an old, an aged Clint Eastwood movie. Someone who really doesn't want to get involved but ends up having to get involved, and he wins. And then he just wants to go home. And that's Abraham at this point in the story. Anyway, he returns. I'm in verse 17, so Genesis 14:17. He returned from defeating Chedorlaomer and the kings with him. The king of Sodom came out to meet him in the valley of Shaveh, which is the valley of the king. And King Melchizedek of Salem brought up bread and wine. He was a priest of El Elyon. Who's El Elyon? Your Bible says God Most High, probably. But his technical name is El Elyon. The word El is the Canaanite word for God, and El Elyon is like the highest God in all of the system of Canaan's deities. So it's a little Zeus-like, but a creator. Canaanites are throwing around the word El like there's no tomorrow. And so there's not a real specific meaning of the word El. It's ruin, you might say. And Melchizedek blessed Abram, saying, "Blessed be Abram of El Elyon, creator of heaven and earth. And blessed be El Elyon, who has delivered your foes into your hand." Now, that's kind of shady theology, right? You could see Abram saying, "Wait, dude, you don't understand. This God is other. This God has initiated a relationship that's not like just some generic creator type. I can't take your money." Instead, Abram tithes. The king of Sodom said to Abram, "Give me the persons and take the possessions for yourself." But Abram said to the king of Sodom, "I swear to Yahweh El Elyon, creator of heaven and earth, I won't take as much as a thread or a sandal strap of what is yours. For you shall not say it's I who have made Abram rich." So, what does Abram do? Doesn't quite play Melchizedek's game, but he takes Melchizedek's language, El Elyon, and he puts a new name on top of it, Yahweh El Elyon. The creator of heaven and earth, who's kind of vague to you, you're not sure. I can tell you who he is. He's the covenanting God who has set me on a journey to bless all the families of the earth. Over in John 4, another story like that, a Samaritan woman. Samaritans have pretty sketchy theology. They have a God who's kind of a little too culturally Samaritan. And when Jesus shows up and she says, "So, we worship on this mountain, you worship on Zion. So whose side are you on?" And Jesus just says, the time is coming when God will be worshipped in spirit and truth. And Jesus doesn't, he doesn't rule out her faith. He says, yes, salvation is from the Jews, so your theology, no, a little too iffy. Nevertheless, it'll do. Because I'm going to fill it with a new meaning. And he does. So, Newbegin will call this true contextualization over against false contextualization. That's a preview of coming attractions. But it gives us a way forward. In a setting where the word God means too many things, we can still use the word to mean the right thing.